this will be our fourth trip that we're doing. We've done two trips through Social Hikers already. The first one was in Patagonia, and Legia and
Rod.
Legia and Rod are here. They were with us in Patagonia, so they can share sort of what that experience was like. We did another trip just this past January, 2 months ago, in Iceland, and that was awesome. We're going back to Patagonia in December of 2025, same itinerary we did a year ago. And we have some people signed up already for that. We still have openings at early bird rates, so that's available. And then in January 2026, we're going to Kilimanjaro. And this has been a bucket list thing for a lot of people. I know it has been for me to go and hike one of the 7 summits. These are the 7 tallest mountains on each of the 7 continents. All right, so I will ask if you could mute your phone or your device unless you need to talk, just so we can reduce sort of background noise. Here's what we're going to cover tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about what Mount Kilimanjaro, what the weather's like in January. We're going to do a day-by-day walkthrough of the itinerary and kind of how much hiking we're doing. We'll talk about the cost, the payment options, and the refund policy. Talk about flights to Kilimanjaro.
I'll see you tomorrow morning.
Kilimanjaro International Airport, which is in Tanzania, and we can talk a little bit about that, and then open it up to any other questions you guys have. I will be going into more detail on training and equipment. We have some lists for that already, but I'm going to go into more detail of that with the people who sign up for the trip. But I can give you a high-level overview of some of those things before we go on. And we have a couple people who've done it. Tony Ramos and Carisa Hernandez have both climbed Kilimanjaro, and they can share some of their insights as well. So the team, what it looks like is me, your host, and along with qualified mountain guides and crew, porters, and cooks. So a lot of the gear is carried by your porter, and so you're really only carrying the stuff that you'll need on the trail that day, for the most part. Like rain shell, layers, snacks, water, that kind of thing. But it's these trips up Kilimanjaro require that you use a guide service, and they provide a lot of support for people. I don't know, Tony or Carissa, do you want to add anything about what that looks like?
Yeah, basically they will carry the tents, the sleeping bags, your clothes, your extra clothes, and basically you're just carrying a small backpack with essentials you're needing, like you mentioned during the trail, water, snacks, maybe extra layers, headlamp,
Ibuprofen.
ibuprofen, yeah, some medicine, but it's pretty much they do the hard work of carrying everything up the mountain.
Yeah, and they do all the cooking and stuff as well, like for breakfast and dinner.
Yeah,
that's pretty awesome.
Carissa, you want to chime in?
I think you covered it. Essentially, it's exactly what you said. They assist by carrying all the heavy things. You're carrying your day pack. And the other thing that I appreciated is there's always enough guides so that on your final day of summit, for the most part, most groups that I understand, they'll assign you an individual porter or guide to each person summiting, so they can kind of help you individually. So that was very helpful with the whole summit as well.
Yeah, it's a good safety thing as well, because they have somebody who's like aware of how you're feeling, if there are any issues that come up, and can kind of make some judgment calls if the altitude is affecting you or something like that.
Yeah, the other thing is I know they checked, at least in our group, every night. They were verifying our oxygen saturation. They were able to take things like a blood pressure if there was a concern. So health-wise, safety-wise, they were very good about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So a little bit about Mount Kilimanjaro. It's 19,341 feet above sea level. It's the tallest mountain on the African continent, which makes it one of the seven summits. These are the tallest seven mountains on each of the seven continents. And however, it's not a technical climb. So there's not, you don't need to put a climbing harness on and a helmet and ropes, at least not on the route that we're taking. So a few other things just to be aware of is one is that it's 9 hours ahead of Pacific time. I use Pacific time as my reference because that's the time zone I'm in. If you're on the East Coast, it's not quite as bad, but 9 hours is pretty significant. And for that reason, I kind of recommend that there is an option when you book the trip to have arrive a day earlier. And I don't know. I'm that's what I'm planning to do, just to kind of give me a chance to adjust to the jet lag, and adjust a little bit. So the airport that you would fly into the airport code is JRO. It's the Kilimanjaro International Airport. It's in Tanzania, and it sits at an elevation of 2,932 feet. So that'd be pretty much like the lowest point that you would be at in this trip. There's multiple routes up Kilimanjaro. This particular trip, we're hiking the Machame Route, and I think I'm saying that right. I don't know. All right, so Kilimanjaro in January. Just if you do some Googling about this and like the best months to climb, generally January is one of their two dry seasons. And the dry season's valuable for a couple of reasons. One, on the lower elevations, when you start out, you're going through rainforest. And if you're in there during the wet season, it's mud. And it's a slog. And that's not a guarantee there won't be mud when we're there, but because it's dry season, it's a better chance that it won't be that won't be an issue. The other reason is that you get a chance for clear days with visibility. I've talked to people who've done Kilimanjaro and they got up there to the sign you've seen, and I'll have a picture of this. You can kind of see it in the very far background on that at that high point in this photo. But the sign, I'll talk to some people who've been up there and they couldn't see anything because they were in the clouds. And that's also a possibility. Sometimes that's the way the weather is. You're in the clouds. You don't know that it's going to be clear. But January is part of the dry season. The chances are best for, good visibility and clear days. There is a possibility of occasional showers. There is a good chance that there may be snow up above 14,000 feet. However, I see that as a positive in this case. It's, again, not a technical climb, but it's something that would really kind of enhance the experience and help people. You get a chance to see things with all the snow-covered beauty and everything. The route that we're taking is the same route that Tony and Carissa took back in 2018, the Machame Route. It's generally considered one of the best routes for the highest chance of summiting, and that's because you have excellent acclimatization and an easier summit night. So we're going to be doing this over 7 nights, I believe. So it's a pretty long, we get a chance to kind of get used to some of the elevations. If we look at the map on here, we're going basically clockwise. So we start on the left side and go up and then kind of traverse across and then stage for our summit, which is that little spur, and then come down this other route on the other side. So it's kind of like directly down. And you can see, we hit our high point and then we just go down, 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 basically over a day and a half. So it is, it's going to be a pretty epic in that regard. I'm going to share the itinerary and just kind of walk through it. If you guys have questions, if you can add those to the chat on the in the thing. Let's see. It says, oh, I guess not everybody can send messages. Let's see if I can figure out how to do that. No, it's not letting me turn that on for some reason. Okay. So if you have a question, there is a little hand icon on the bottom of your screen, should be. And oh, there we go. Jen just sent a message. Great. Awesome. So it does work. If you have a question, post it in there or raise your hand with the little icon, and I'll try to get to that as we go along. And if not, then we'll get it at the end. And thanks again to Jen for testing that for me. That's awesome. All right, so I'm going to share another screen. This is the sort of the default itinerary that that you'll see on the website. So if you go, you decide I want to sign up for this, the link is in the chat. You'll see that, and you can go in there. They have the details on this itinerary there. It's formatted a little bit differently. But basically, January 17th is our first time where we gather as a group. And so we come together at 5:30 at the hotel. We'll all be at the same hotel. We do an equipment check with our mountain guide just to make sure that nobody forgot an essential piece of gear. And I'm sure we'll be meeting, every new signs up, we'll be meeting online multiple times before Kilimanjaro, so that this won't be an issue for us. But it's just a sort of a safety thing and a formality. We're going to go through that equipment check. And then we have a welcome dinner at the hotel restaurant. The next day, and a couple things that talks a little bit about how a lot of our gear will be carried by the porters. So, but they are limited to carrying 33 pounds of your personal belongings. So that is something to be aware of. It's not like a 50-pound bag that you can check on the plane. It's a 33-pound, duffel, and there'll be some guidelines on what exactly that looks like and what you need to carry yourself. Day 2, January 18th is when we actually start the hike, and we start with they'll give you a little overview of what happens on day 2. We have breakfast at the hotel, scrambled eggs, sausage, pancakes, coffee, all of that. And then we are going on a 45-minute drive from Moshi, which is the city, to Machame village at 4,888 feet. And they're going to pack up our duffels and the things that they're carrying. It may be possible to drive from the village to the gate. Otherwise, it's a 3-kilometer walk if the conditions aren't good. We register at the gate office and we start to ascend. And at the beginning, we go through a rainforest. We're going to see perhaps monkeys. There's a possibility of rain. It could be soggy, muddy, and slippery. And we should be able to get to the camp the first day, in the afternoon. So we get a chance to, kind of unwind and rest and, check to make sure that our boots are feeling good, our feet are feeling good, our bodies are good. The elevation gain on that day is 3,900 feet. So it's not a trivial amount of elevation gain, but it's manageable. If you've done the 6-pack of peaks in Southern California, you've done that. And the distance is 7 miles. So the difference here is it's kind of like doing Cucamonga Peak one way, instead of turning around and coming back. And they estimate 6 to 7 hours. Obviously, that's going to vary based on, our group and how fast we are going. And I think there's going to be an effort to, make sure that we stay together as a group, on this portion of the trip, and we're not taking off and getting lost. As we talked about earlier, lunches and all the meals are prepared for us. So that's a really nice thing about this. They're cooking meals at the main tent. In this case, they say most of them typically include a 3-course set menu with a soup, a main dish that could be rice, pasta, beef, along with vegetables and bread, and then fresh fruit for dessert with water, coffee, and tea available. There are bathrooms at Machame Camp, um, and our tents will be equipped with. We don't have to bring a tent. You'll have to bring your own sleeping bag and a camp pillow, but the sleeping pad and the tent itself are provided. Okay, day 3, which is our second day of hiking. Again, breakfast in camp. At this point, we're going to Shira Camp, which is around 12,600 feet. There's a lot of places in the US where it's hard to get up that high. There are places, obviously. Um, and so it's good. I think a good word of advice is if you have an opportunity to train and to climb one of these higher elevation peaks like Humphreys Peak in Flagstaff, Arizona, or a 14er like Mount Whitney or some of the 14ers in Colorado, which by the way, I'm organizing a 10-day camping and hiking trip in Colorado this July, which we will be doing 4 14ers and 2 lesser peaks. So we're going to be doing the 6-pack of Colorado peaks, and you can join me if you'd like. Send me a message if you want to be a part of that, and I can send you more information. This on this day we do about 4 miles. Doesn't sound like a lot, but we're climbing 2,630 feet, and we're above 10,000 feet most of that time. I don't know about you, but for me, once I hit around 10,000 feet, I start to feel the impact of the altitude. It starts to impact me. I slow down a little bit, and I think that's going to be true for a lot of people. So just be aware of how your body reacts, and that it may take, 4 miles you might be doing a mile an hour or even less on average to get there. All right, so day 4. We're going to ascend a scree path to Lava Tower and then descend to the Barranco campsite. So this gives us a chance to acclimate. We go up to a higher elevation, we come back down a little bit, and kind of get to know what that's like. So we're going to go up to, we'll end up at 12,960 feet. But we go up first to 15,000 and come back down. So we get a chance to climb, but we also descend, and that's giving our bodies a chance to acclimate to the elevation. It's about 7 miles and 2,630 feet of net elevation gain. All right, day 5, which is our 4th day of hiking. So we're continuing on to Karanga Camp, and Karanga is not that much higher, about 1,000 feet higher than Barranco Wall or Barranco Camp. And so we just need to, take our time, go through that. We're only climbing 1,000 feet over 3 miles, so it's not a lot of time. But you'll see some things. This campsite is totally exposed to ever-present gales, and we need to be familiar with the terrain before dark because they're pitched on narrow, stony, and a dangerous ridge. We don't want to be falling off the ridge, so that's an important thing to kind of keep in mind. And day 6, which is our 5th day, we go up to Barafu Camp, which is at 15,331 feet. We're climbing just almost 2,000 feet of vertical and only 2 miles though. So this is a chance for us to try to get some rest because the next day is our summit attempt. And for that, on day 7, they're going to wake us up around midnight. And so the goal is any of the snow that's on there is nice and crusty. So your micro spikes or whatever will just kind of dig in and it's easier. You're not slipping. And the goal is to get up there by sunrise. So, you're headed up that way. You get up, you make it to Stella Point. From Stella Point, you continue on to Uhuru Peak, which is it's not level, but it's not as steep. Does that sound about right, guys?
That's right. Usually, Stella Point's the harder part. The last part's a little bit of an incline, but
Yeah,
not so much.
not so much. Yeah. So we hit the summit, 19,341 feet. We take some photos and we just take our time, turn around, heading back down. And so we're going to be descending down to 10,170 feet. So we will be climb 3,900 to 19,341, and we're descending a heck of a lot. All over 9,000 that's over 9,000 feet of descent. So a lot of downhill. And then we have one more night at Nweka Camp. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of that. And on day 8 is our final day 8, which is our 7th day on the mountain, is our final day descending all the way down to the gate, and we're done with the trek. We transfer back to the same hotel in Moshi and shower and have a big, have a celebration dinner basically. And so then the final day is so day 9 we all head back home. So you get a chance to check out, go back to the airport and head home. That's the itinerary. I'm going to stop that. And gosh, it's so cool to see some folks. Angie, good to see you. Harvey, good to see you. And it's great to have so many folks on here that I've, hiked with or adventured with. And hopefully we can do that again in January next year at Kilimanjaro. So that's a little bit about an overview of Kilimanjaro. Let's see. I'm going to see what I have. Oh, flying to Kilimanjaro. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that. I don't have like any sort of magic advice for flying. I'll tell you what I use, and if anybody has some better advice, believe me, I'm all ears. Feel free to chime in. Typically, what I go to start with is Google Flights. And I plugged in here LAX to Kilimanjaro. Obviously, if you're on the East Coast, it's going to be a little different. Or if you're in the Pacific Northwest or somewhere else in the country, it's going to be a little bit different. But I just figured, a lot of people are in the Southern California area. I plugged in LAX just as a point of reference. Okay, so a few things to be aware of. It's a long-ass flight. A really long flight. And so when I did this, you'll see this little +2 or +2 or +1. So what that means is I'm leaving on Thursday, January 15th. If it says +2, I get there 2 days later. I don't get there until Saturday. That's a long time that's a lot of flying to make that happen. It's in this case, 26 hours and 40 minutes. In this other case, it's 29 hours with an 8-hour layover in Qatar. So just be aware of that. And also be aware that you need to be there on in time for our gear check on that day. So if you're like some of these flights, I'm noticing it gets in at 8:40 p.m. on Friday. Friday, that's okay. But if it was on Saturday the 17th, it would be too late. So be aware of that when you're plugging these numbers in. Sometimes, like in this case, a 10-hour easier flight with only one. All of these flights have one stop, which is not too bad. But it has a minimal layover in Amsterdam, 55 minutes in Amsterdam. I might go with that, even though it's a little bit more expensive. Of course, your mileage is going to be a little bit different, depending on where you're flying from and all of that good stuff. But One of the things that you can do if you look at this and you find, oh, that's too late for me, I want to get there earlier or something, you can come up here and just tick and go back to Wednesday and say, all right, well, show me the flights that leave on Wednesday and what would that look like. And obviously there's other departing flights down here that some of them have more stops, 3 stops, 2 stops. The pricing is going to be different and so on. So just be aware of that. I do recommend, I am going to get there 1 day early. So I'm going to get there on the 16th just so that I can kind of avoid some of the or I'm not going to avoid jet lag, but I'm hopefully going to be able to rest a little bit better so that when we start hiking on the what is it, Sunday, the 18th, then I'll be ready. Let's see. I'm going to share a link to this. There's somebody who's having problems connecting, so bear with me 1 second. Okay. And the last thing I wanted to share, let's see if I can find it.
Regarding the flights, Jeff,
Yeah,
since it's such a long time from now till then, it's a good time to maybe even set up a service to see what prices are at different times and get a good deal. Because I think
that's
we waited till the almost the end, and it was like $1,900, $2,000 for the flight alone. So
yeah, that's probably going to be, a big chunk of the trip is the flight.
yeah, yeah.
One other thing to be aware of: do not book your flight until the trip is confirmed. So we need a minimum of 8 people booking the flight. We already have one booking just 30 minutes ago, just before this started. And so we need 7 more before it's confirmed. If we don't get 8 people, then the trip is canceled. So you would get your deposit back, but I don't know about your flight, so you would have to figure that out. So that's why I recommend just waiting. I'll let everybody know once it's confirmed, and then you're safe to go ahead and book a flight. A couple other things to be aware of: you do need a visa to travel to Tanzania, and the cost is, I want to say it's about $140. It's an online process. And it used to be something where you had to stand in line at the airport and go through a whole big thing. And I think you can still do that, but they've transferred most of it, and they're encouraging most people now to do the online thing. So you can avoid that. And but that's another cost. And there are guidelines for tipping for our porters, our guides, our cooks, all of that. I don't have all of that right handy, but I think there's I want to say, if I'm going from memory, I'm thinking that they said to kind of budget about $200 for tips. There's a big crew that's helping you make this a successful and an amazing trip.
Jeff, one other thing I'd like to bring up is they recommended some shots before we traveled to Africa, and I think Carissa could probably speak more to it because she's a nurse, so she she knows.
Carissa, did you hear that? Or I don't know. Are you there?
You still
Yeah,
here?
I'm
Yeah,
listening. Those were actually mandatory for us, Tony, some of them,
Yeah.
and then some were optional. I know we had to, you have to either take the oral medications for the mosquitoes, or you could do an injection. There's a couple of them. I can give them to you, Jeff. Let me pull it. I'm an infectious disease nurse practitioner, so that is under my guideline, but offhand, I can't think of all of them. So I'll send it to you, and then you can kind of give that to your group who's already planning to go. But yes, there are some that are actually required, and then some that were optional.
Yeah. And I have while you're there, I have a question about Diamox. So I know a lot of people talk about using Diamox to help with the altitude sickness. Do you have any words of wisdom on that or thoughts on that?
In regards to the Diamox, I feel like that's more of a personal thing. However, if any of the individuals choose to use it, I recommend that you trial it beforehand. So let's say you're going to do something in a higher elevation, like 12 to 14,000. I would try it there first because they can have some side effects. And sometimes they're a little unwelcoming. Sometimes you can feel tingling in the extremities. Certain things like that. They're not severe. I did not use Diamox for Kilimanjaro. I did take it with me, and you have to take it 48 hours prior to being in elevation. Otherwise, it doesn't really serve a purpose because it has to become therapeutic in the bloodstream before you use it. But I did take it when I hiked Pico de Orizaba, which is at 18,500. And though I did have the side effects of the tingling, for me, it was still worth it to utilize it.
Good to know. And those are things, Diamox is something that requires a doctor's prescription, isn't that correct?
It is a prescription medication, yes.
Yeah, so you would have to talk to your doctor and have that conversation anyway. So
primary physician could prescribe it. I know some of the clinics that do the injections you need for international travel, those physicians will also do that as well.
okay. I'm going to share the write-up that Carisa and Tony and some other folks trip to Kilimanjaro. I shared a link to this in the chat, so you can find it. It's on SoCal Hiker, and it just talks about the same route and kind of like what the adventure was, and you can see, some of the things that they learned about it, and hydration and going slowly, and some of the photos that they shared from it, of what the route was like, and some of the views along the way. And it's just a nice way to kind of get a glimpse into, what the trip is like. You can see here Carissa doing her little yoga pose on, with the sunset, I think, maybe a sunrise, I'm not sure. And just really, really cool to be able to go through, and you can click on some of these to see, some of the other photos and look a little closer. They're scrambling up some of this Barranca wall, I want to say.
Yeah, that's probably the worst that you get, which is not really bad at all. You do have to do a little bit of rock scrambling, but like you mentioned, there's no ropes required or anything like that.
Yeah. So you use your hands
Yeah.
in some sections, but we've probably all done that at some point. And look at that. This is what's ahead. It's the mountain yet to climb. Anyhow, it's take a moment and just go through and look at, there's a great photo of the sunrise or the sunset, I'm not sure which, from Tony.
That was the sunrise.
Sunrise, okay.
Yeah.
And
how cold does it get at night?
How cold does it get at night? It does get below freezing, or it can get below freezing.
Yeah, definitely. I think it goes below freezing. It's probably in the 30s or 20s.
Yeah. So
just to add to that, my water, unless it was in my sleeping bag at night, it was freezing. So it was absolutely below freezing.
Ooh. Yeah.
Wow.
And they actually recommend.
Did you stay warm though at that temperature overnight?
Were you able to stay warm, you guys?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we have layers, but one of the things that was really beneficial that they recommended for us is we all took Nalgene bottles, and they would warm water at night and fill our bottles, and they told us to put them in our sleeping bag, and they would stay warm throughout the night. So that was beneficial as well.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that they will do, is they will come around with boiling water to your tent at the end of it, so you can use it. You can freshen up. You can use it for some tea. You can certainly put it in your Nalgene and throw it in by your feet, down in your sleeping bag, to keep your feet warm. Make sure it's screwed on really tight so it doesn't leak. But there's all of those things that you can do to just kind of help. And I think
So how many nights is it this call? Like, is it just the last night or it's more of them?
it's not just the last night, because once you get up above 10,000 feet, it's going to be cold at night.
Okay.
How cold it's difficult to say. You can look on mountain-forecast.com and search for Kilimanjaro, and it'll show you kind of like what the temperature is at the summit, what the temperature is at different elevations, and what the forecast is for the high and the low on each day. And you'll get a sense of sort of what it might be like. Of course, it can vary depending on the weather, but this is something that's a very well-traveled route. A lot of people do this every year. And so it's not and it is something that's done year round. Generally speaking, they do not do guided trips so much in like April, May because of the rain and the weather. But in January or this January, February, there's a lot of trips going, so it's a good time, and you'll see a lot of other people on the mountain.
Jeff, do you know at the top how close we get to the glaciers?
I do not.
You get pretty close. I would say maybe half a mile. You could see them really close from when you're at the summit. And I think some of the pictures that you had, you could see the glacier on the side. If you go back to the pictures.
Oh yeah, let me share that.
So
like this.
Let me see. Yeah, that's part of the glacier there.
Yeah, so there's no glacial travel on this trip. There may be snow travel on snowfields, but not on glaciers. So we won't have to worry about crevasses or the Bergschrund or any of those obstacles that are often occur on a glacier. But we will see the glaciers for sure. All right. Let's see.
One other thing I just remembered, Jeff, is you mentioned there was restrooms at the first campgrounds.
Yeah.
And the later campgrounds, there's no restrooms, but the porters take like a porta potty kind of. You go in a tent and do your thing, but it's they carry that up and carry it back down.
Wow.
It's like
That's
a
the
little
low man on the
yeah,
totem pole, so to
yeah.
speak, right? Who gets that job?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So Harvey, you had a question. You want to go ahead and ask your question?
I actually typed it up in the chat whether the Barranco wall is comparable to the Flatiron in the Phoenix area. Since
Yeah, I've done Flatiron. I haven't done Barranco Wall, so I don't know. Tony, Carissa, have you done the Flatiron in outside of Phoenix?
I have not, so I can't compare it. But they do
Okay.
call the Barranco Wall, they call it the kissing wall, because there
kissing
is some rocks that kind of jet out that they tell you to face it, and your arms are kind of out as you like kind of slide past the wall. So, I mean, if you're afraid of heights, it could be a little problematic. But one of my friends that went with Tony and I in our group, she's very afraid of heights, and she did it. She was okay. We just talked her through it, and she was just fine. So it's completely doable. There was a number of other groups doing it while we were doing it. Your porter's going to carry an almost 40-pound bag up the wall. I mean, I know they do it all the time, but it's very doable. It's you just listen to what they say and help each other. It was easy. It was fine.
Yeah, so it
Good to
sounds
know.
easier than Flatiron.
Yeah. Well, I've done Flatiron. That one, is an experience in itself. It's not really hiking. It's a
No,
scramble
it's
fest.
not. Yeah, it is not. Okay. So just a few things. We have right now the link to the trip itself is now open for registration, so people can sign up for Kilimanjaro. A few things to be aware of, Rod. I think you had asked about this. There is an age restriction. You have to be 18 or older for the trip. And other than that, I don't think that there's too much to go into. So the pricing right now is at $28.50 for the early birds, and that's the first 8 people. We have one person, it's the next 7 people, I guess. It goes, you save $100 on that. So, and I think this is going to be just an amazing experience. And I hope that I can see, some of you we've traveled before together. I hope we get to travel again. And some of you who haven't traveled with me, I hope we get a chance to do that. So that'd be a lot of fun. Jen, you raised your hand. Can't hear you, Jen. Okay, she's putting it in the chat. And if anybody else has a question, feel free to raise your hand or pop it in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer it. Okay, so Jen, that's a good question. So on the website, requesting a spot means that you're going to put a deposit down. And I did say that I would talk about this. You'll see this on the website itself. Actually, let me just see if I can share that. Okay. Share window. Okay. So this is the website. You'll see here when it says request a spot, and the question is, does that commit you to a purchase? What that the answer is yes and no. What it does commit you to is a deposit. And so there is a minimum of, you can make any deposit, but a minimum of 25%. So I don't know, that's $500 or a little bit more maybe, to request a spot. That deposit is fully refundable up until the trip is confirmed. So once we have reached eight people, booked on this, then the trip is considered confirmed and the deposit is no longer refundable. And the cancellation policy is at the bottom of that page, and it shows 25% is the deposit you have to put down. It is refundable as long as the trip is pending. Additional payments. So if let's say you decide I'm going to just pay the whole thing right now, that's also refundable as long as the trip is pending. Once the trip is confirmed, your spot is confirmed, the down payment is non-refundable, the additional payments are refundable. And once we're 90 days out from the trip, so working backwards, December, November, October, October 17th, then it would be non-refundable. Both of them would be non-refundable. We have somebody who was signed up for our Iceland trip, and she had gone on our Patagonia trip last year. I think she's planning to, she had signed up for Iceland and had to cancel for personal reasons. And then I think she's planning to go on Kilimanjaro. And so it wasn't refunded to her because she was in that sort of non-refundable window, but other than the cancellation, the $100 cancellation fee, the remainder of it is applied to a trip credit, which she's going to be using on Kilimanjaro. All right, another question. Single rooms, yes, they are more expensive. And I'm just going to go in and, because these are all double occupancy. There'd be, 2 twin beds in a room, unless you are traveling as a couple and you want to share a bed, you can request that as well. When you request a spot, let's see, you're going to put in your information. The amount that's due now is $712. And then if you want to add a traveler, if you're booking for a partner or a friend, you can do that. And then let's see. I'll just go through and see if I can put this in. And just to show you kind of what it's going to ask for. Oregon. And there we go. So you can see that for a private room, there's an additional trip cost of $90. So in this particular case, we're only in a hotel for 2 nights, the first night and the last night. So and then that's a $90 for a private room. If there is a pre-night accommodation, which is what I'm recommending, that would be on January 16th, arriving. That's $82. So it's a pretty economical deal. And those are the only add-ons for this trip. So that's kind of what that looks like. All right, let's go back. Will this trip be a part of the South Africa trip? All right. Somebody knows what's going on here. I'll stop this. Yes, I have a South Africa trip that is planned that starts on the 27th of January. So if you look at the dates of this one ends on the 25th. We're doing another trip. It's in South Africa, and it starts 2 days later. We're going to be flying into Cape Town, and I want to say it's an 8-day trip, and it's going to be, but it's going to be a vacation compared to this, right? Because we're going to be wine tasting, we're going to be going on a safari, a couple photo safaris, we're going to be zip lining and kayaking or paddleboarding, that kind of thing. So it's going to be a much different experience than climbing Kilimanjaro. But since we looked at the airfare, and airfare is a big thing, and it takes a lot to travel to Africa already. It's something to probably consider if you think that you might not ever get back there. It might be worth doubling up, and if you have the time and availability and the flexibility to spend that time, absolutely love for you to join us. They are going to be separate bookings, and it does complicate air travel a little bit. I've looked into this myself because I'm going to be doing that. And what I've learned is what I'll end up doing is buying a one-way ticket to Kilimanjaro and then a one-way ticket to Cape Town. But most of the trips to Cape Town require that I travel north first and then go back down to Cape Town. There's nothing that's direct from Kilimanjaro to Cape Town, unfortunately. But it's not an expensive flight. I think it was like $500, $450. And then I'll book my final one-way ticket will be from Cape Town back home at the end of the whole thing. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. And let me just share. We haven't launched that trip yet, so it's not bookable. But it is going to be on a little more on the luxe side. So we're staying in 4-star hotels every night. There's no camping or that sort of thing. We will hike. We will have, some good food and some, a great experience. There are a couple of optional add-ons, including, diving in a shark tank, which apparently is a thing down there that a lot of people do. My wife has already told me she's not doing that, but I'm gonna give it a shot, and it might be worth checking out. So as soon as we fill either one of the 2 trips that we have open right now, we have Patagonia in December, we have Kilimanjaro in January. as soon as one of those fills up, then we will open up the third trip, which will be South Africa. So I can share more details when that becomes available. Hopefully in another week or two.
Jeff,
Any
I
other
have a
questions?
question.
So one of the questions I think that I'm surprised nobody asked is about training. And I'm going to toss this back to Carissa and Tony and just ask, what would you recommend for training besides, of course, the 6-Pack of Peaks challenge?
I'll let Carissa go first.
When I did Kilimanjaro, did a lot of hiking. You want to, keep on the trails. The one thing that I did do within a close proximity to us hiking Kilimanjaro was I did hike Mount Whitney and I did hike Mount Langley. Because for me personally, I have to keep within a pretty high elevation when I'm going to do something that's in the 19,000. And so that was helpful to me. I try to do those within like a 6 to 8 week proximity to when I'm going to hike something really big. So I was able to do that during that time. The only issue I'm going to see is that this summit is going to be in January, and that would put you like November, December, which can be not very good months to hike high elevations. So in that case, what I would recommend is just get yourself into the highest elevation that you can. One thing that I did do, because I have trained for things that are higher up, where weather was not going to be good prior, is, do as high as you can, 10,000 feet if you can. And then I would just push myself to do them at a quicker rate every time I did it. And that helps with the endurance, which will also help you with elevation. And honestly, a lot of that I think I learned from Tony, because one of my first trips up Mount Whitney was with Tony. So now I'm going to pass it to Tony, who actually is more of an expert than I am.
Team No
Yeah.
Sleep.
Yeah, no, it's been a while. I've toned it down a lot since then. For me, I guess I was hiking pretty much every weekend during that time. So every weekend I was somewhere in some mountain somewhere. So I think just keeping up with your activity level, being out there in the mountains, and just getting your body used to climbing, and mainly that going uphill, because there is a lot of uphill on this. So doing things like Iron Mountain, or or bigger mountains like Langley or Mount Whitney are very helpful. And if you could stay up there for a night, like stay in high elevation, that also helps just to acclimate your body. But I think Carissa kind of covered it.
Yeah, we're going. I mentioned this early on, but I'm taking a group to Colorado in July for a 10-day camping and hiking trip. We're doing the Colorado 6-Pack of Peaks. The first 2 peaks are just below 10,000 feet. The last 4 are all 14ers. And some of the camps that we'll be at are like right around 10,000 feet. So it's going to be a high elevation sort of experience. And I think the biggest peak that we'll be doing is Mount Elbert, which is the tallest mountain in this. It's the state high point for Colorado. And, we climb 3,900 feet, I want to say. So very similar, vertical gain to what we see on Kilimanjaro. Not the elevation, though, obviously. We're still way, way, we're still 5,000 feet below that. So, but that tells you something. It tells you how your body responds at higher altitude. It tells you, how it slows you down, or how it makes you feel, or do you get a headache, or do you need to hydrate more, those kinds of things. So it gives you a chance to kind of work through some of those things. It's not going to be perfect, but it's a help. So I do have spots available if people want to join me on a camping and hiking kind of thing. My wife Joan and I we're gonna be in our camper van. We have Philip in the Southern California area is going to be out there with his little Hyundai pickup in his teardrop trailer. I've got another friend of mine, Ben, from Portland, who's going to be flying out to Denver and then renting a adventure bike. He's going to be riding his motorcycle from camp to camp. And we'll all be kind of camping together and hiking together every day for 10 days. So it's going to be a really great experience. Two peaks over 2 days, and then a third day of just sort of rest and exploration of the mountain towns, and then repeat that 3 times. So we get 6 peaks in. So that's going to be a lot of fun, and that'd be a great opportunity. Another thing that you can do on your own as well. So if you want to if you don't have that time to take off or whatever, and you want to get some experience in the at a higher altitude. Angie, you have a question.
Yeah, I saw when you were going through the thing that travel insurance was required because it was a high adventure thing. Now, did you purchase your travel insurance through them, or do you go through a different agency?
You can do either. And so it's not something that you book when you reserve your spot on the trip. They don't offer it as like an add-on there. You'd have to, but they recommend a company called World Nomad. I used them on our trip to Patagonia last year. And they give you a link, you go to their website, you put in some information. I think there were a couple of different options for like a premium level of coverage or not. And for that particular trip, the 2 of us, I think it was around $200 for 2 people.
Okay.
So, and we did not get the premium coverage though. So the one caveat here is that you need to make sure that it covers treks up to the height that we'll be at on Mount Kilimanjaro, which in this case, World Nomad standard policy does do that. If you want to use somebody else, like there's a company that I've worked with called Fay that does travel insurance. You just need to make sure that it covers that kind of high altitude trek. And it is important that it's a requirement for something like this, because it is not without risk, clearly. I mean, if there's while this is a safe experience, and the guides and the groups and the experience that is on the mountain is decades of experience that we'll be hiking with, things can go wrong. So it's just good to have that insurance as a.
What would happen in the event that something did go wrong? Let's say somebody just can't make it, they're not responding well, they're just not dealing with the altitude, unexpected.
They put you in a wheelbarrow with one tire in the front, and they get you down to where they can get you on a helicopter.
Yeah. I don't have a definitive answer for that off the top of my head, but I will find out. I don't know. Tony or Carissa, did you run into anybody who was not able, maybe not in your group, but somebody, or did you hear about somebody who didn't summit? And
We
what
did
happens
have,
in these cases?
the day we were summiting, there was not from our group, but another member from another group who was being brought down by 2 porters. Because she wasn't in our group, I'm not certain of what was wrong with her. She seemed very kind of lethargic. My guess is it was just the elevation. And 2 porters were kind of dragging her down very quickly. And when you're in high elevation and you're having issues, that's the treatment initially, is to get you down into lower elevation. But I remember we did ask one of the guides at one point what does happen if there's some type of medical emergency. And that's exactly what he said, is that they get the individual, it'll be a porter, one of the guides, to an area that's kind of an open area. He said there are certain places throughout the routes in which a helicopter can be brought in. But again, you are in certain areas at times where a helicopter is not accessible to you. So he said, it's a matter of getting you to certain areas. And as far as I know, every group, the guide does carry an oxygen tank. Our guide said it's only for emergency use, but to know that they had it was, calmed some of the fears I had about that elevation.
Yeah, and maybe can you say something about the size of the support team that's with you on the group? I mean, your group was, I don't know, you had about 10 people in your group that were hikers, and then you had like how many people, porters, guides, cooks, and all of that?
Oh my goodness, that our group was huge. So there was only 6 hikers. There were 6 of us that were hiking. There was 3 guides. And then a lot of your porters are guides in training. So like I said, the last day of summit, we were all assigned either a guide or a guide in training because there's certain, training and specialty that they have to do that. We had a couple of cooks, and then per person, Tony, correct me on this if I'm wrong, I think per person it was like 2 to 4 porters per person. So the group is huge. It's a lot of assistance with you.
Which is good, because if you did need, like the person in the other group who needed some assistance getting down, they can do that. There's the staff, the personnel is there to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And we weren't even aware initially, but at times you'll have people who leave the group because some of the porters will take down the trash, like the trash that, you're accumulating from cooking and all that type of thing. And other porters will come up from the base and join your group. So at all times you have that large group, but you have some coming going. So they're, getting rid of the trash that needs to be taken down. And there's a lot going on their side behind the scenes. And I didn't even know it until it was pointed out because, you're so focused on getting up that mountain. But the support team is huge and they were amazing. They're absolutely amazing. I was so grateful for them. Who knows if I would have summited without their help and, all along the way. And Tony probably has some more input as well on that.
Yeah, I would say at least 2.5 to 3 people per person. And again, like Carisa mentioned, some of them would be going down, other ones would be coming up, and some of them would go ahead of us to set up the tents before we got there, and so it was very well coordinated. And they did mention if there was anything that happened, they would have enough people to take the person down if they decided that they weren't going to go for any further. So there's enough people to make sure that everybody's taken care of.
And nobody gets left behind.
Yeah,
You're
no.
like, yeah, you just wait here, hang out here.
Did anybody run into in the lower portions like elephants or lions?
In that area, I don't believe there's lions and elephants in that area where we're at. If you go down to like some safari areas, yeah, but they're a ways away. There's definitely monkeys and other animals, but not lions or elephants there.
Yeah, on the SoCal hiker trip report from Carisa and Tony, there's a photo of a primate in the rainforest area that they walk through. So scroll through that and you'll see some of those photos. Alicia, you had a question.
Yes, you mentioned that there's a minimum of 8 people that are needed for this trip to happen. Is there a maximum amount of people that can do this trip?
There is. Let me see if I can figure that out. So the maximum number of people in our group is our top limit is 22. I might cap it before that, but we have lots of room. So
yeah. So that the reason I'm asking, like, if there's enough time to make a decision, I can make the decision right away. I need some time. So
I'll let you know. So I will keep you posted if it looks like we're running out of spaces, but I don't think that's going to happen right away.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Veronica.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's any females that are traveling solo and flying out of LAX. Maybe if I decide to going. I'd like to know if someone in this group is going. And I'm also asking, what's the average age of this group? I'm older.
All right. Well, you saw me enter my birth date, so let's see. I am let's see, I was born in 62, so you do the math. I'm in my 60s, and
Okay.
so I'm setting the bar right there,
All
Will
right.
there be people older than me? I don't know. It's possible. I saw a video of the oldest guy, and this may have changed since that video was recorded. This was a few years ago. At the time, he was the oldest guy to summit, and he was 80.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's, I don't, and there's not like a limit, you have to be 65 or less or anything like that. So,
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm 60. I'm just kind of wondering, is this like a younger group going? Most of your
I would say it's going to skew a little bit, like 50s, 60s, some 40s. Let's see, the person who just signed up, I'm going to tell you because we have one person, and they are 40. So
Veronica, I travel alone. But I'm coming I live in Santa Cruz, so I'm not sure where I would be flying from. It might be SFO, it might be LAX. It just depends on where the flights go. But yeah, I usually do travel alone.
okay.
And I'm 55.
And one of the things that we'll do is once we get our group, we'll have some more of this with just the group that's going, and we'll be able to coordinate who's flying from where, and get to know each other a little bit and say, all right, let's room together, that kind of thing. And so that you feel like some of these people if you haven't met them in person,
Okay.
And there's a good chance we'll have some other people from Southern California.
I have one more question. It's my understanding that the last day, the summit, it's the toughest day. So we do get to the summit, and then we have to descend, I think, from 19,000 up to 10,000. So I guess I'm asking Carisa, how difficult is this day? And how difficult is to the descent as well, all at once?
Of course, summit day is the hardest. You're going to go very slowly up to Uru Peak, which is where you kind of hit the plateau, which is the top of the volcano over to the actual summit, which that portion is not very difficult. You're going to be slogging very slowly because you're at such a high elevation. And I know breathing is tough. Initially, we all started out with our small backpacks, and our guides, at least my guide, said, let me carry your backpack. And I said, it's under 10 pounds, I'll be fine. And within half a mile, I was like, here, carry my backpack. Because, it is difficult. I felt like I can't catch my breath, and then it would stop and take a nice deep breath. But it's doable. It's with anything. You've done any of the bigger peaks, breathing gets a little tougher in the higher elevations. So, and that's one of the big things that they'll start from the get-go is they use the word pole pole, which means slowly, slowly. And that's exactly how they're going to have you do the entire hike. It's definitely doable, especially if you really train for it. Like I said, get yourself in the elevation, get the endurance going. And they really focus on getting you up there and getting you up there safely. I certainly think you can do it, Lee. I hiked with you in Patagonia, and you're a great hiker. I really think that there wouldn't be an issue with the training.
How about the
Understood. But
downhill,
what
though? That's a
about
lot of
coming
downhill.
down? It's a lot of downhill.
Yeah, the coming down, I didn't think was a problem at all. Tony will probably tell you the same thing. Yes, you're descending quickly, but for me, descending, coming down in the elevation quite quickly is no problem at all. In fact, we had a shorter time frame in which we hiked to the summit and came back down. So we made the summit and we came completely off the mountain in one day. And I didn't have any issue. I thought it was great. The view is beautiful. You're just ecstatic because you did this hike, and I thought that part was easy. That was the best part of the hike.
Is it
Well,
steep to come down, or it's
Not very. So you're
Is
going to come down
no?
you're going to come down a completely different route, which there
Uh-huh.
wasn't areas I felt that were very steep at all. It's not like that Barranco wall you're going to have to climb. It's a whole different route. The only issue that we had, which you may not because you're going in a drier season, is when you get back down to the what's considered the rainforest type area, is we hit a lot of muddy areas. So I know some of us were slipping a little bit, but not steep at all. Not steep.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to keep in mind is that you're going to be, as you come down in elevation, the oxygen level goes up, and you're going to feel better just from that. You know, it's like I can breathe better. My body feels a little bit more normal. Will you be tired? Will your legs be tired? Will your feet be beat up? Maybe. But it's going to be a good feeling, you know, like a feeling of accomplishment.
Yeah, just to add on to what Carissa mentioned, for me, I love going downhill. And if you don't have any problem with your knees and, like going downhill, I was jogging, running down the hill, and it was so much fun.
Did you guys or any in
yeah.
one in your group use trekking poles to help?
We did use it going up, at least I did. I can't remember if everybody else had trekking poles, but yeah, the going up the last day is tough. It's like I walked 2-3 steps, stopped, took a breath, walked another 2-3 steps, walked and stopped again, and just really slow, but you'll get there.
What is it? Pole pole?
Pole, yeah.
Yeah.
The one other thing I think on the last day was because you're waking up at midnight, it's really cold at that time, and so you just don't want to get out of the sleeping bag. But once the sun comes out, it gives you that energy, and you just you pick it up again, and
That's
make it to
also
the summit.
motivation to keep moving.
Yeah,
You know, to stay warm.
yeah.
All right. Well, who all is interested in climbing Kilimanjaro? I am. All right. Well, gosh, I hope we can enjoy that experience together. Let's see. Ligia, you have another question?
No. I was just saying that I'm interested.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Well, guys, I really appreciate your time tonight. Thanks for joining me. And I hope to see you join me in January on Kilimanjaro. Special thanks to Tony and Carissa for giving us their firsthand experience. That's really, really valuable. I wish that I could share that. I know that, like, having been to Patagonia, with some of you, and going back there in December, it's a whole different experience being able to say, like, oh yeah, this is what it's going to be like. But I feel like you've been a big help to be able to let us know kind of what to expect and some of the things to be aware of as we prepare for this.
I'm available.
yeah.
I'm available, as I'm sure Tony will say the same
Yeah.
thing. If anyone has any other questions, they can message us. I have no issue answering those. If they have any questions about Diamox, because I am actually, registered to be able to talk about that type of aspect and things like that, they can certainly message us individually. I don't think that's a problem for Tony either.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks,
Willing
guys.
to help.
And Jeff, how are we gonna hear from you about this trip? Via email, or how do you plan to coordinate further discussions?
Well, I'll send an email to everybody who was signed up for tonight, and I'll share it also. There was I had created an event on Facebook for this, and I'll share it there as well.
Okay, perfect.
So I'll have all the links. I'll have the recording and the slides and all of that good stuff. So, and then if there's any other questions, you can, shoot them my way. I'll be happy to, do my best to answer those. And then once we get our group start to, coagulate, then we'll go into, have group sessions like this. And we'll probably do, depending on how quickly this comes together, we'll probably do 3 or 4 of those at least, leading up to the event, just to make sure everyone's on track with their training and their gear, and answering all the detailed questions about visas and airfare and all of those good things. So
Jeff, if sorry, one more thing. If you want to include Ruth in your correspondence and the email, she just wasn't able to participate tonight, but I'm gonna
definitely
tell her about it. But please include her in the group email and all the other notifications.
Oh, for sure, I will. Thanks for the reminder, Ligia. All right,
No
thank you, everybody.
problem.
Have a great evening. And,
Thank you.
Don't
Bye.
hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Hopefully, we'll see you online in the months to come.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.